What's going on, everybody? This is the blockchain backer, bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Today, we're going to be talking about the crypto market at large with the correction that we're in. We'll also peek over there at the Bitcoin price chart and the altcoin market. But really, I wanted to talk about the correction that we're in and the range that we've been in for 27 days as things are starting to become a little bit more clear for me over here on this channel. As we all know, Bitcoin's been stuck here since March 14th, just ranging sideways. I've seen every different idea out there, and pretty much lots of people are all just kind of following into the same camp, making the same prediction on what this correction is actually going to look like for Bitcoin. But I actually think we're a little bit further along than most people do think. As anybody who watches this YouTube channel at any point in time throughout history would know, as we get back to the 702 retracement, that becomes my ultimate concern. It's been the idea of where we could get to here. After going through Doomtown of 2022 and 2023, here we are. We pinpoint nail it. Now it's just been fingernail biting on whether or not we're going to get through it. So I've been waiting for ranging behavior to play out, for price structures to play out, to start getting something a little bit more clear. And still, even right now, it's not exactly ridiculously clear over here on others from a structural standpoint, especially since even in this range, it's really just exceeded all retracement levels and all the way back down and then all the way back up and still just completely going sideways in a range. Bitcoin, it's no different in that story over there for Bitcoin as well, exceeding all retracement levels and then getting back down here within these ranges. Total 2, a little bit better, back up to the 786 retracement level, but still, we're just ranging in here. And while Ethereum, as it got back to its retracement levels, the story is the same in here. Still just ranging, got back to its 618 retracement level here, but really nothing but ranging going on, whether it's Ethereum, whether it's Total 2, which is the altcoin market, or whether it's Bitcoin. And lots of these have been very complicated structures. However, as I pointed to today in Markets in the Morning, it's actually incredibly clear when we look at the entire crypto market and just exclude Bitcoin and exclude Ethereum and look at the whole crypto market, which is Total 3. Total 3 is going to exclude Bitcoin, exclude Ethereum, and look at everything else. And then boom, suddenly it's all crystal clear in here on what type of correction we're having in here. Now, of course, for the last several weeks, it's just been completely nail biting for me over here with us being back at this 702 retracement level for the altcoin market and what direction we're going to have. But fortunately, the structure that we actually have right here is a very common corrective structure. And while most are waiting for there to still be another high and then for prices to pull back down, which I've seen with some of my favorite YouTubers, I've seen it over there with lots of accounts over there on Twitter, I actually don't think we're going to get it. I actually think that was the peak. And now we're just waiting for prices to come back down lower before then bouncing out and then going and taking out those highs. And you heard that right. A lot of worry for me right here with us being back at these retracement levels. But the corrective structure that we actually have right here is very common. For those who were here in 2021, when we were looking for the top to come in for Bitcoin, which we did expect here, we were looking for something just like this, where we would go poke up at the high, set another one, and then fall back down. This was the tweet that I'd posted over there on October 17th with that style structure, where we do go set a little bit of a high, and then that's the end of the bull run, which is how that played out, because that's typically how tops come in before you go into longer corrective structures. One thing that really didn't emerge at that time, of course, was alt season coming in here. And really that this just didn't go as high as anticipated, that we would actually get something more like that, where we would actually get into real retracement levels, because that's what we typically do. So we were looking for back in 2022, and it just never ended up emerging. But I want to talk about this for just a second, and then you'll understand why I'm pointing to that when we look over there at the altcoin market, is that this is typically what happens before you go into corrective structures, where you have these two attempts to set this high, and then it completely fails, and then you go into a longer correction. And why that's what happened when we got up here, and why what we've done over here with the altcoin market is exactly that before we go into a correction. This was a reference that was made a lot during the past to understand what these corrections look like. And this is actually from back in 2017 down here on the bottom for crypto, for Bitcoin. going from May all the way to July. Notice the price behavior of how it gets above the highs up here just now. Notice these highs of how it gets above, and then we go into correction. And like what we were looking for back in 2017, to emerge here in 2021, it just never ended up panning itself out. However, here in 2024, it actually has. We've seen exactly that play itself out to get back into the retracement levels and then shuffle its way back down again, which tells me that we are actually in a very standard normal correction that's happening here for the cryptocurrency market. Many times it takes a lot of price action to play out before we can end up getting anything to become crystal clear. Now, we've got enough data here on the charts for us to be able to pretty clearly see that we're in a correction and that we really haven't finished it yet. But the positive thing about this correction is that they're typically continuation structures. For me, it gives me a little bit of sigh of relief knowing where we're at. We're back at the retracements. This is the big question mark on what happens to markets after that, and waiting for something familiar to start to materialize to build some confidence or some concerns on which direction we're heading to next. But now we're creating a very common correction to happen in here, and we see all the structures really starting to emerge their way out in here, but we just have a little ways to go. So it's kind of like a mix of two different things. It's good news because this type of structure tends to go into a continuation higher, but the bad news is that it's not done and that there's still more to come, and then that there's that event that typically scares the crud out of most participants in the market, which is referred to as capitulation, in which price eventually goes full blown back to the lows and scares the living daylights out of the market to where participants will sell out at the lows thinking that it's all over, we're done, we're crashing, the gig is up, game over. I know this because I've been through many of these before. I went through this one back in the spring and summertime of 2017. And so what I see here is I see a very clear corrective structure forming. What I also see is that there's still more to go with it. There's still the capitulation period that has to come with it. But at the same time, these types of corrections tend to lead to continuations to happen to the upside. So for me, I look at that through the lights of being like, man, I've been really unsettled being back at these retracement levels. But now I see something that makes me way more optimistic that we have a pretty clear corrective structure starting to form right in here. However, we're not done with it. So the big takeaway from it all is that this is positive, right? These are typical corrections that lead to continuations. That's good news. This has been incredibly stressful being back at these levels, but fortunately we're making something that looks very, very familiar and very normal for a continuation correction. But we'll kind of talk about it real quick, just not a whole lot to do with like drawing on charts or anything like that, but just to talk about what it's like to go through these types of things is that one, there could still be quite a bit of time left on this thing. We could still have weeks left on this before this ends up playing out. Time is very difficult to be able to predict. Just to give you kind of a gauge of where we're at right now. What are we at? 27 days into this thing. In here, when you were 27 days in, kind of give you an idea of where you were, right? The whole thing ended up taking a total of 51 days if you were going to do something like that, right? I mean, that gets you out to like the first week of May. So just kind of giving you a ballpark idea on just if you kind of kept moving at that same pace, that you'd still have really just the rest of April. And a lot of it would probably be boring if we do just kind of grind sideways, holding on top of a support for some time before finally it starts ending up going. But also to kind of mentally prepare what it's like when you go through capitulation in a correction. And again, this isn't a giant range, right? This is zoomed out on that. This whole thing is just zoomed out just like that. But for some reason, something happens in the market where max pain is inflicted, enough time passes by. That's usually the thing that kills people, is enough time, enough optimism builds up, and then things go the opposite way. And then things get aggressive to the downside. And then a lot of times we'll end up seeing some type of narrative come along with it too that ends up creating a whole lot of more fear, uncertainty, and doubt. We see that a lot. We even saw the SEC time a couple of things in a correction last year. When we were in this correction, the SEC went after Coinbase and after Binance after we had already spent a couple of months correcting. And then right there, right at the very end, that's where they go after Binance and Coinbase. So it created a lot of fear in the market. So enough time elapsed and then a narrative came out. And then that was just a breaking point for a lot of people. So the way these things typically play out is we typically just kind of continue waddling sideways for a couple of weeks, and then eventually the bigger break comes, things get pretty aggressive. And then like we talked about on the XRP price chart, if you were here for this moment just a couple of months ago, is that when this first initial low came in here and we bounced back up, I talked a lot about capitulations and how they work, and that typically the bottom, when people think it's the actual bottom, it's actually not quite it yet. And that we typically have like 5 waves that take us down. We get some type of bounce to emerge out of here to where the market thinks that we're done. And they're like, oop, that's it. That's the biggest bounce that we've seen. But then there's one more that comes and it absolutely flushes. And that's the one that really scares people. That's the one that really capitulates them. And that's how it goes. You would expect to see altcoins, various altcoins, negative 20%, negative whatever, complete fear, complete goblin town. It's over. The gig's up. We're all done. And absolute fear and chaos in that moment. And then it just reverses out, leaving those who sold the bottom behind. And like, so as we move forward in these coming weeks, this is my sincere view of what is coming up, is that we're probably going to be boring for a couple of weeks. Probably a lot of optimism about the block reward halving coming up for Bitcoin, then a lot of questions on whether we go. And then if the price does this, which it looks like it's going to, because this is a normal corrective structure, we'll have the narrative attached to it to say, hey, this is the post-halving crash. Then you're going to see everybody referencing to what post-halving crashes looked like for Bitcoin, and that it'll take months to recover, and that we typically fall this percent and that percent, and totally referencing to the post-halving crash, but it has nothing to do with it. It's just a corrective structure. And likely, these things tend to end in V-bottoms. So for me, back at the retracements, I built a very nice cash pile. I've been sitting on the sidelines with that cash, wondering, am I going to end up throwing it in because Ethereum is going to end up breaking above all retracement levels and get going, or if the altcoin market's going to go, or if we're going to crash, where would it be? Where would a place be that I would end up entering it in? And right now, I see a setup that's coming that leads me to be pretty optimistic. That is likely where it's going in at. But we still are just going to be in a hold period waiting for this to come. And to kind of mentally prepare for it is the way I'm looking at it, that this is what a continuation structure looks like. However, we haven't gotten through the nasty part of it yet. And that's approaching soon, whether that's a week, 2 weeks, 3, 4, 5, whatever. That's typically the next phase of this. And so as we get closer to it and as time comes, if we start to see it emerge, the thing we're really going to be looking for in here when we start heading down, if that happens, is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to look for a bounce to show up in here where everybody's going to think the bottom is in. Then there's going to be one more flush that'll scare the crud out of the market, and that'll be it. And then all eyes on the market caps to see, can we break it? So I'm very optimistic on what I see in regards to a continuation structure emerging from this correction, which hopefully is welcomed as a change of tune because I've been so uneasy here. So on a longer time frame, I'm a little bit more optimistic than I have been, but on a shorter time frame of right now, I think we're going to work our way into a correction that's going to scare the market a little bit. But for those who have cash on the sidelines and been waiting for this moment, it's probably going to be an opportunity, and it will be for me. But I hope you enjoyed seeing this. Hope you enjoyed seeing corrective structures. I know when we're trying to build these things, everybody's looking for something to show up in here when all we've got on the chart is, to right here, right? And there's just not enough developed in a range for us to have a really clear picture. But now that we've gotten all of this show up in here, now that we've got all of these retraces that have happened in here at the particular phases of where we should be having them happen at, now things are getting more clear. And what does it say? It says we're still in a correction. It says capitulation is still going to come over here, but that this type of correction is a continuation correction. And so that's the thing that's optimistic. That's the thing that's exciting. It just means we have a little bit of time left on our hands here, but that an opportunity may be showing up in the near future. And then, come on, baby, knock it out. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it gave you something to look at and to think about when it comes to the markets and where we're at right now. It's painted a little bit more optimism for myself, which I've desperately been wanting with how uneasy and nervous I've been back at these retracement levels to see something familiar really starting to develop in here. So that's exciting for me. We'll keep an eye on it for the coming weeks and how it starts to go and develop and play out. And if it plays out as according to plan, well, then we will track it every step of the way and be screaming for the rooftops when it does. Otherwise, I want to thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. If you're looking for something to do in the meantime, of course, you could check out my website over here, which is bcbacker.com. It's got over 40 videos and over 11 hours of content teaching you how to set up your own charts and your own indicators within TradingView and CoinTrader Pro to do your own charting, teaching you about Wyckoff accumulation distribution, and also Elliott wave theory and a lot of the historical behavior of the crypto market. So downloadable PDF in here with supplemental information to go with a lot of these different sections in here. You can check this out on bcbacker.com. I do also write a newsletter over here, put out 2 newsletters every month right here on Substack. It's at blockchainbacker.substack.com. Most recent one in here is talking a lot about these retraces, the positive things going for crypto, the negative things going on in the macro environment, and how it's such a complicated area that we're in right now, which, as you can even see right now, you just saw the inflation data come out today and how inflation's missing expectations and everybody's screaming, oh my goodness, the Fed isn't going to cut. There's a lot of complications in the market. We talk a lot about them, but not just the bearish stuff. There's lots of bullish stuff at the same time. So check out the most recent newsletter over there on blockchainbacker.substack.com. There's also a lot of research in there about activity levels, altcoin performance in regards to developer activity, and case studies that are put together over there. There's links in the descriptions of each of my videos to bcbacker.com and to my Substack at blockchainbacker.substack.com. Otherwise, I want to thank you so much for watching. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you are new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice and I am not a financial advisor, but if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.